A senator has written a letter to Sony requesting more information about their anti-competitive practices and behavior in the gaming industry. Let's talk about what the senator had to say and what was in the letter that we should discuss. So this was actually posted yesterday, and I'll just bring up the letter here that we're going to be reading in just a second. And here is the post from Senator Kevin Cramer in North Dakota. He says, I sent Sony Corporation a letter regarding its anti-competitive behavior and to request information on the company's acquisition agreements. Now, as far as I know, he has no legal recourse to do this. So, there's one thing I'm going to comment on at the end of the letter. Basically, he's like, you have until May 15th or something like that to respond. Why would they respond to him? I don't think there's any legal requirement for Sony to respond. So yeah, it's a little bit of a strange situation. And before we get into it, people always talk about the campaign contribution. So I actually looked up Kevin Cramer here on opensecrets.com, and apparently it looks like he's just backed by a bunch of PACs and the Freedom Fund and et cetera, et cetera. And most of his industries from 2017 onward are for some securities investment, oil and gas, retired, PACs, and real estate. So I don't believe he's like a tech sector person that's getting back from the tech sector. But what's more important is the letter. So let's read what he has to say. He says, this is a letter to the Sony CEO on anti-competitive behavior in the gaming industry. Senator Cramer raises concerns about anti-competitive behavior in gaming industry, spotlights North Dakota's academic leadership. Basically, he says, I write to express concerns about Sony's efforts to protect its gaming console business from competition. For more than 20 years, Sony has utterly dominated the gaming console market. I don't believe that's accurate. As that market has been defined by the Federal Trade Commission. I still don't think that's accurate, because if we go back 20 years, I do believe we get into the 360 era. And in the 360 era, for the most part in America, the Xbox 360 was on top. It wasn't until much later that the PlayStation 3 console ended up outselling the Xbox 360 near the end of the life cycle of both products. Anyway. He continues, I'm concerned Sony's dominance of that market and its efforts to perpetuate its current position imperils an important economic development opportunity for North Dakota. Now, this is just the website. I actually went and got the full letter. So we're going to go ahead and go through the full letter where I've taken a bunch of notes, and I have some thoughts about some of the things that he had to say. So this is a letter to Yoshida, and we're going to read it right now. But before I do, consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell if you do like my content. And if you already subscribed, hit that like button, help the video, be populated on YouTube. So here is the letter. Kevin Cramer, North Dakota. Kenichiro Yoshida, Chairman, President, and CEO. And he sends it to Tokyo. Dear Mr. Yoshida. Again, this is the one quote that we have from the document, except now I have my notes. I already kind of talked about how this initial statement isn't true, and then it's still not true over the last 20 years. So let's continue on from there. The important bit is he talks about $200 billion in revenue and how much money this could be making in his territory. But let's go to the specific accusations. He says, given the growing significance of the gaming industry to North Dakota, I am troubled by reports Sony appears to leverage its dominance to exclude competition rather than enabling choice for players and developers. And according to published reports, Sony controls over 68%. That is from Polygon, who actually sources the FTC report of the global market for gaming consoles, and a shocking 98% of the Japanese market. Again, their own definitions are where these senators are getting these percentages. We all know that's not accurate when you include Nintendo, but that's how they wanted it defined. So that's how it's being defined, but now used against them by a lot of these senators. Increasingly, it appears Sony's dominance is attributed to exclusionary practices, include paying game publishers not to distribute their games on rival consoles. My note here is that this is a little different than timed exclusives, right? This is actively going out and saying, hey, do not release your game on Game Pass, or do not release your game, period, on the other platform. In the past, like with Tomb Raider, I think is the example a lot of people go to, Xbox would do the same thing. There would be an exclusivity period of about 1 year. These are agreements that would straight up stop games from ever coming to the Xbox platform. And it's causing a little bit of interest by senators and the market, especially because Sony has been going around Washington saying, hey, look into this Activision deal, look into this Activision deal. And then I feel like a lot of senators are like, maybe we should look into you a little bit, because why are you so worried about this when you just bought Bungie? And he actually gets into that in a second. Sony's anti-competitive conduct has also included lobbying the FTC and competition regulators abroad to oppose, I hate how this thing works anyway, oppose Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision, a transaction many legal and gaming industry experts believe would promote a more competitive gaming market. I actually do think if this deal goes through, it would promote a more competitive gaming market. Right now, a lot of devs want to go to Sony because they're the market leader. You're going to get more eyeballs on your game. If Xbox is able to purchase Activision Blizzard, which I've said through and through, basically, that this deal is going to go through. I still think this deal is going to go through. And I think what's going to happen is Sony will have to offer better packages to developers, maybe get rid of the crossplay tax and things like that they've been busted for in the past. And it's going to be a better opportunity for developers, publishers to figure out who they want to go with. And both Microsoft and Sony will have to compete not only for your attention, but also the attention of developers and publishers, because they're going to be closer in terms of market share. And in addition, you got Nintendo out there, who isn't even being included in this conversation, who will also be vying for that. It will get back to where we were in the 360 era near the end of the console life cycle, where all the consoles were very close in terms of, market share. Obviously, Nintendo's kind of got their own thing going on because they have these IPs that are beloved, like Zelda, Metroid, Mario, that they just print money for them, Pokemon, right? And I think this will be good for the industry because it will force all of them to come up with different packages and incentives to get you to play on their platform. Let's continue on, though. Sony's anti-competitive conduct has also included lobbying the FTC and competition regulators abroad to oppose Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision, a transaction many legal and gaming industry experts believe would promote a more competitive gaming market. Even more troubling is the fact Sony's lobbying of the FTC and other regulators began shortly after Sony itself acquired Bungie, another major gaming competitor. I hadn't really thought about that. They didn't start lobbying until after they acquired Bungie for more money than a lot of people felt Bungie was worth. But I mean, that's I don't think that's accurate. I think Bungie is a great company, and I think Sony made a very smart investment purchasing Bungie. But it does kind of pose an interesting question. So you just bought a company for, I believe it was $6.86 billion or something like that. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was a lot of money. It wasn't $69 billion, but still, they did buy a company. And then they're like, well, we don't want Microsoft to be able to spend that much money on that big of a company. And it's the first time I've really seen that pointed out by a senator who doesn't seem to have any ties to Microsoft. As far as I know, if I'm incorrect in that, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, Sony's efforts to block this transaction apparently include a refusal to accept an agreement that fully addresses its concerns and would expand customers' access to games. Now, remember, all Activision games in that deal would continue to come to all platforms. I think even without signing that deal, that's still going to be offered to Sony, but the terms might not be as favorable to them. Right now, I believe the terms seem to be better than what Activision was offering in the past. So I'm a little surprised that they haven't signed anything. They clearly want this merger blocked, so they're just going to keep doing that. And it will be interesting to see how they react. There's already talks that Sony could potentially file I can't remember the specific terminology of it, but like a counterclaim to block the merger, even if it gets approved. So like, they're not going to stop with this. This news is going to continue even after the deal closes, it sounds like. And there's some stuff going on with the FTC. A lot happened today when I woke up. So there's stuff going on with the FTC I'm going to do a separate video about. And there's this letter. Sony's conduct hurts American consumers by leading to higher prices and reduced choice. That sentence is really close to the reason why I don't like Sony's corporate practices. I don't like that they were the first to $70. I don't like that they charged like the upgrade fee. And I never really liked that. And that one sentence kind of illustrated that in a very succinct way, or at least close. Sony's conduct hurts consumers, if I take out the American, by leading to higher prices and reduced choice. Because they're the market leader and they're paying people to only release stuff on their platform, that obviously causes a reduced choice for consumers. And that's mainly what I take issue with. I also didn't like that they were the first to 70. I don't like that Microsoft went to 70 either. I don't like that games are $70. I want my $60 video games, but whatever. I guess it was coming eventually, right? So I can't do anything about it but bemoan the past. Them trying to block this deal, though, I think at the end of the day is potentially going to result in fewer choices for you. Because what I said earlier, publishers and developers, if there's three big players in the market, those three big players will have to compete for their attention and your dollars, right? And right now, I think Xbox is pretty close to having something really, really good. And if they lock in Activision, they're toe-to-toe with Sony. And the acquisitions after that, for Sony, there's been rumors forever that Sony's going to acquire Square. And I do think there will be other purchases after this Activision thing closes, but everybody's kind of like stopped. Sony can't buy anybody because if they do, it's like, well, you're buying companies. Why do you care about this deal, right? Microsoft can't really buy anybody because, I mean, they have to close this Activision deal first. There's like $3 billion on the line at this point because they're past all those deals, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's finish this story. And there's just been a lot developing lately that I haven't been talking to you guys about. So importantly, it also constrains economic opportunities for developers, including for small and independent developers. There's been all those letters about how indie developers say, hey, like we would rather release on Xbox because they have a smaller market share. And Sony like isn't doing enough to make sure our game gets promoted and get our attention. So the fact that Xbox is able to offer a better incentive for indie developers to release on their platform is really, really interesting. Now, if this deal goes through and Xbox looks even more enticing to those indie developers, maybe Sony finally gets their stuff together and figures out whatever is going on over there that is causing indie developers to be less incentivized to release on the PlayStation platform. I think largely it's a storefront issue where those games aren't getting highlighted. And I've done some stories in the past about how there's just some weird stuff going on with how they handle indie dev promotion. But there's been some really good indie games over on PlayStation that makes me happy because that makes me think that maybe they're addressing that issue finally. Anyway, I'm all over the place today. To assure transparency regarding how Sony conducts its businesses, I ask you to please provide the following unredacted copies of the following information. All agreements that provide Sony with an exclusive right to distribute a game developed by an independent publisher. All agreements between Sony and a game publisher that this part's hilarious. There's no way Sony gives them this. All agreements between Sony and a game publisher that prevent the publisher from distributing its games on a rival subscription or streaming service. All internal company documents describing the strategic rationale for Sony's acquisition of Bungie, and all correspondence with any U.S. federal or state government or regulatory agency relating to competition in the video game industry. Please respond in writing along with the requested information no later than May 1st, 2023. Okay, look, Kevin Cramer, as far as I know, there's no reason why Sony is going to provide this information to them. He did CC some of the people that we talked about in the past. Ambassador Catherine Tai, the United States representative. They've been talking about, the issues with Japan and being anti-competitive, but I find it really interesting that he has this deadline. So this was posted yesterday. He's like, oh yeah, and I want all that in the next 16 days, 15 days. There's no way. Oh yeah, sure. Here's 40,000 documents. every communication we've ever had about Bungie. It's not going to happen. But it is an interesting story in that it brings up some thoughts about how Sony has been conducting themselves. At the end of the day, I actually, personally, I'm not like super hard on them for having exclusives, right? Like, if Microsoft was doing the same thing, would I be mad about it? No, because those two companies came to an agreement and they have exclusives. To be clear, the thing I don't like is when they complain that Microsoft does it. So it's all good when Sony is doing it, but as soon as Microsoft does it, it's bad. That's the part that's really confusing to me. So it's fine that Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 are PlayStation exclusives, and people say stuff like, well, it wouldn't have sold on Xbox, and everybody plays those games on PlayStation anyway. They're still paying to have those games exclusively locked on the PlayStation platform. And then you bemoan when they buy the company that makes Starfield and cancel the PlayStation 5 version. That's the same thing that's happening with the Final Fantasy game. So it's just a little ridiculous to me that you would complain that Final Fantasy can be exclusive to PlayStation, but when Starfield ends up being exclusive, or they were complaining about Redfall not that long ago, probably not anymore because it's locked at 30 and everybody's mad about that. But yeah, it's just like, well, look, you can't have both. I want everything to come to PlayStation and nothing to come to Xbox. That's basically what the argument is, right? It's okay if it's third party, but it has to come to both platforms. No, that's just not how it's going to work, right? I think there's a stronger case when you talk about Elder Scrolls, but I'm getting a little rambly right now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the Senator letter. And there's a lot of interesting stuff going on right now. There's talks about the FTC going to court with Microsoft and just people that are saying the FTC is just out of control. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate video, so check that out. And I had a very important question for you, seeing it's a rambly video anyway. I need to know, do you like these blue light glasses, or do I look worse with the blue light glasses? I wear them usually when I work now because my eyes are super sensitive because I just had the LASIK. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you like my content, hit that like button if you're already subscribed to help the channel grow. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a member, thank you so much, members, for supporting this channel. I really appreciate you. If you don't like the ads, click the join button, and I post all these videos with no ads for members. And if you want to see the video where I'm pretty upset about Redfall and the state of Redfall, like the fact that it's 30 FPS and that's being patched later, the fact that it has an always online requirement and it's being patched later, like maybe just make sure that the game has some of these 60 FPS for a shooter is a bare minimum requirement in my opinion. Like Call of Duty's been doing 60 FPS since the 360. I believe it was 720, 60 frames. It's insane to me that the PlayStation 4 launch title Destiny was 30 frames per second, right? And now we're getting Redfall on the most powerful console. Anyway, go watch that video. Go watch my Redfall rant. I'm going to get out of here before I get into it again. I'm really salty about it. I'll see you for next time. Bye for now, everybody.